Hi there, and welcome to the App Clinic. I am Dr. Reto Meyer.
And I'm Dr. Ian Nee Lewis.
We are not real doctors.
But we are qualified to operate on Android apps in several states and U.S. territories.
The App Clinic is our weekly opportunity to take a look at some great Android apps and talk a little about what we can do to make them even better.
Right, so today we're looking at travel planning and booking apps. I think the idea is we've got the holidays coming up. We all go somewhere to get away from our families.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at the apps that'll help us plan that.
Okay, so we have a number of apps that we're going to have a look at today. We're going to start with WorldScope Webcams 4.0. We've also got Kayak, Hipmunk, and TripAdvisor. So the idea here is they're all apps which are going to help you to plan your trip, to make the bookings for your trip, rather than apps which are going to help you while you are on holidays. We are going to look at those later. We had some great suggestions in the moderator queue for those apps. Rest assured, we will be checking them out as well.
I think we're going to start with WorldScope Web Camera, which is a little bit of a twist on what we wanted to see. You know, we were thinking more of planning and booking in terms of like Kayak or Expedia, that sort of service. But this one's an interesting twist. What WorldScope Webcams does is lets you check out your destination before you go.
Oh, nice.
So it'll let you look at webcams pretty much anywhere. So, oh, no worries. No worries. It's cool. We were on a streak there.
A streak
one
of
day
one.
without an accident. We'll just reset that to zero now.
It's such a nice intro animation.
It is. Well, thank you. So what WorldScope does is lets you take a look at different webcams across the world and see what's going on. So for instance, here's Kolonaki, where I used to live,
nice.
Sindagma Square. I was hoping we'd catch a riot. No such luck.
No, that's a shame.
Yeah, they seem to be doing all right. A lot of these webcams just refresh every few minutes, every hour. Some of them refresh much more frequently than that. But you can at least get an idea of what's happening where you want to go. So it's
Nice.
like sort of one up on Google Street View in a way. You're able to add to favorites with a star. You're able to refresh the webcam. And there's a huge list of options.
Oh, okay. That's a lot of things.
My favorite, of course, is Show on Map, because what I'm really asking is, how close is this webcam to my hotel?
Absolutely.
We've already been burned that way, right? So let's take a look. Show on Map.
Oh, they're using OpenStreetMaps. Nice.
They certainly are.
That's interesting.
It's a little bit rough, mostly because I can see where we are on the map, but that doesn't really help me.
Well, no.
No,
It's
and
not
if I
necessarily as specific as you'd like it to be.
Right. If I zoom in, but in general, you know, you can
Oh, Perth. Nice. Show me Perth.
absolutely.
This is my old hometown.
Well, yeah, Hillary's Boat Harbor. They've only got a
Obviously.
black and white webcam, but that's cool.
Seems
They
somewhat
had an
fitting.
audio only before, and now they're all the way up to the 50s.
Excellent. Well, I thought they were using
Technology.
semaphore flags to explain what the current temperature and conditions were like.
Well, that's how the TCP connection is.
Of course.
It's
That
physical
makes
link
sense.
for these
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
is TCP over semaphore. All right. So yeah, very interesting little
Yeah,
app.
that's
Obviously doesn't help you in the travel planning process any more than this, but
No.
not a bad idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be interesting to see features like this integrated into other apps, or indeed using intents to allow you to view webcams of areas around the hotels you want to book. So maybe an opportunity for some of the other apps that we're looking at today to link into an app like this.
Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and move on.
All right, so the next app we wanted to look at was Hipmunk.
Yes.
Have you checked this one out as well?
I checked this
I think
one
you had a look
out,
at the first
yeah.
few here, didn't you?
I did, actually, and then we didn't rearrange them into an order that would make sense,
well,
did
that's
we?
because all that cool movie growy stuff that
That
takes
took
time.
a long time. So long, we don't even have a script for this. If I was reading off the teleprompter now, I'd be saying, "Hello, everyone. My name is Reto Meyer, and welcome to This Week in Android Development." I totally want to get that as a clip. Okay, so Hipmunk. Hipmunk is more of an all-in-one. Now, Hipmunk, full disclosure, we're friends with the guys that made this software. They, at least one of them used to work here.
Oh, is that right?
A really cool little piece of software. Unfortunately, isn't going to help us a lot where we are right now, which is, let's see, 77 St. George's Terrace in Perth.
Oh, nice. I have a friend of mine has a new bar and restaurant in exactly that location.
Is it Lala Rook?
It might be.
That's great. So, so what
What a
Hipmunk does is
coincidence.
lets you. I'll just back out here. So this is the first page of Hipmunk. It's a dashboard with 2 items that's trying not to be a dashboard. And I can either do a
Trying
hotel
very hard
search
to be a
or
list rather than a dashboard.
yes, hotel search or flight search. Now the truth is, I'm not going to find any hotels in Perth. They just don't exist.
So is that right?
But if let's say that I'm planning a trip, and this is actually one thing that I found a little odd. I felt like the first thing I wanted in an application like this was not to actually see my location. But let's we'll go over that a little bit more. So the trip that I want to take is to Venice. Oh, not
Venice,
Florida. Venice, Italy. Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't seem to work.
No, I give up. Let's go to Venice, Florida, or Valencia, Venezuela. Apparently,
That's pretty much the same thing.
when I travel, I'm easy. Okay, now it's got a little progress bar down there, and notice it's filling in all the hotels that it can find that fit my definition of what I wanted.
Oh, okay.
And you can filter using the settings log, and you can get a heat map to let you know what's good and bad in terms of price. You can also do a flight search, and their flight search is apparently, okay, Perth to Honolulu, that is perfect. We'll go ahead and do that.
It's a really cheap flight too.
Yeah?
Yeah, apparently.
Awesome. All right, they do take a while, but I hope we can get to this screen in a reasonable amount of time because they have probably the best flight search screen I've ever seen.
Here you go.
Yeah, so
Look at it.
they allow you to search by different categories, price and when you depart and when you arrive, but they also let you sort by this thing called agony. I think that's the coolest thing in the world.
Nice.
It's a combination of the departure and arrival time, the total time of the flight, how bad your seat is, and a bunch of other things. And it also lets you
Oh, you can
see on the
zoom in a
calendar.
little more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the nice thing, I think we don't have it set up here, but this will actually integrate with your calendar. So if you have
that's quite handy.
events, for instance,
You can see whether you're going to make it there in time, make sure that you leave after a reasonable period after your last meeting.
exactly, like for instance, it might say, oh, here we've got the Android Developers Weekly, and I would say, well, I don't care about that, so ignore it. And there we go. It also color codes the airline, but I haven't figured it out yet. I was
Yeah.
hoping at first that
like
it would
a
frequent flyer
alliance.
programmer.
Yeah.
And
Not
it's
so much.
not.
I
because-
think it's actually based on the color scheme of the airline, because Cathay Pacific is that olive green, Emirates is that sort of red color, so that could be it. Japan Airlines, I don't know if they're grey. I don't know.
yeah.
It looks like it could be based around something like that.
Anyway, just a really cool thing. It also
That's nice.
marks your flights as to whether they have Wi-Fi or not, and a couple of other convenient little things.
Nice.
So that's cool. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to quickly go over Kayak. So Kayak is one of a family of apps that I think are really just a gateway to the web service.
Yeah.
They're all very similar, but I think it's pretty well done. You have the opportunity to search for hotels and check in with your check-in, check-out time. You can search your flights, and you can also search any number of other things, including your airport information, not seat information. I was surprised about that.
That's unfortunate.
Or I might have just missed it.
Sure.
But also, you can even do your packing list here.
Oh, nice.
So
So
it's
it's kind
sort
of
of
the full service model of travel.
Right, it's an
booking and planning.
all-in-one flight planner.
Nice.
Now, well, let's take a look at the apps that you looked at today.
Sure. So I had looked at a couple this morning when I wasn't messing around in Keynote. There's 2 apps. One is Fast Booking and the other TripAdvisor. So we're going to have a look at Fast Booking first, which is this app here. If I can hit the icon. So this is sort of based primarily around just the booking part of the app. And much like most of the other apps we're looking at, you have that ability to basically be able to specify your details, find out if there are hotels available. So this app isn't actually available in the US. It's a European app. But I thought, why not have a look? So one of the things which struck me immediately upon looking at this app is that you sort of end up straight in this page where you're ready to book hotels. There's no real there's no additional features. There's no flights. It's really just hotel bookings. If we search around me, I'm going to suspect that it's not going to work. So I'm going to put in let's put in Venice because you never got to go there last time.
Yeah.
And search.
Now it's odd. I have occasionally wanted exactly this, just something that would take my current location and tell me what
Where
hotels
can I
were
stay?
around.
Yeah.
But that was only when I was like backpacking around the world as a college. I mean, you've really got to be in an odd position to want to use that feature.
Well, that being said, it's not the most ridiculous. I know that there has been occasions in my past when I haven't had a backpack, but have still been looking for somewhere sort of last minute.
Yeah. Absolutely. When you rent a car at Heathrow and decide to drive up to Scotland to visit distilleries, whenever you're tired, you want to find out where the nearest hotel is.
Something nearby, exactly. So you go through and it's got the usual things that you'd expect from a hotel booking app. You've got descriptions, star ratings, find out about the rooms, galleries, reviews, all those sorts of things. So it's a fully featured hotel booking app, but doesn't really go beyond that.
Yeah, but it certainly has really nice hotel booking features. I mean, I don't think any of
absolutely.
the other apps have these galleries. It's really
No,
cool.
this is very true. They've really, gone that extra step, I think, to make sure that you can see exactly what it is you're going to be getting.
Now, Rachel and I travel a lot, right? I mean, we've been around the world, and I've done a lot of booking. I'm mostly on websites, and I will say I usually have 3 or 4 tabs open. One is for the flights to try and figure out what the best times are. Maybe airlines to figure out which alliance they belong to or how many miles I'm going to get. I'll probably have Seat Guru open so I can see, if I'm getting a seat near the bathroom or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll also have the individual hotel pages open to try and find out what their rooms are like, what their policies are like. So, to me, an all-in-one travel app would be a godsend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we'd have to do this a lot, and often when we're traveling, it's for some industry conference, like CES, Mobile World Congress, and so, you're really in a situation where there aren't a lot of rooms, a lot of people are coming at the same time, and you're having to do this for work, so it's not pleasure, you're not trying to, you're not enjoying the process of finding a place to stay. You just want to have all the information in one place, make sure that it's going to be as pleasant as it can be.
Exactly. We actually came up with some prescriptions for a good travel app, but before we get to them, let's take a look at our last app.
One more app to look at, which is TripAdvisor. I like any app which has Trip at the beginning of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So TripAdvisor is great. So I use this website a lot, and my wife especially uses it a lot to help plan our holidays. And so this is getting a little bit closer to this full service model. You can see here that we've got hotels, restaurants, things to do, flights, near me now, that whole sort of thing. So even from booking the hotels to begin with before you start your travel. Let's go with current location. I think that is what it does by default. Oops. So now this is something that I did want to talk about really briefly. It really wants me to rate the app. I hate this. I hate this feature. I hate people telling me, please validate me. Tell me how awesome I am. If I like the app, I will go and give it a good review.
Yeah,
this makes me want to give it a bad review.
It feels a little desperate.
It really does.
Honestly, I think that we may feel that way just because we look at so many apps.
I guess, but I mean, to me, it's breaking the magic, right? It's like we've talked about this a lot, and the sort of app that I want to use doesn't make me think about the fact that it's an app. It's just going to be part of the phone, something that I'm always going to have installed on any device that I have.
Right, it's true. I don't think you'd ever get into your Bentley and have your Bentley say, hey, do you like driving this car? Maybe you'd like to talk about it on Facebook.
Tell your friends how much you love driving your Bentley. It's a little desperate. It's a little needy. And in this app in particular, if I hit back now, then okay, it's gone. It knows that I say no, but actually you'll find that as we continue to navigate through, it is going to pop up again and again.
Oh.
Which is, unfortunate.
Yeah, I think the only way that I've been happy with that is if I see that as a single menu option in the overflow.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, right, I was going to rate that app. Okay, I can, and for some reason I'm completely clueless about how to launch Google Play.
I installed the app in Google Play and used the reviews to decide whether I wanted it, but I still can't figure out how to review it. Okay, then it's a useful thing.
Sure.
But we'll stop beating on that horse. So the real key here is that it has all of the TripAdvisor stuff on here. So it's got huge number of traveler reviews, and these are really valuable reviews, which a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into, providing that information. There's photos from people who have actually stayed in these places, all done with nice, view pages, so you can see exactly what you're looking at. It's quite nice.
Although we can't really rate the content so much when we're talking about the Android app, because a lot of great services exist on the web.
Yes, this is true.
And not all of them have great Android apps to go along with that great content.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is a really good example of trying to take something where you already have this great content and leveraging it on what is really rapidly becoming the way that people access their information. And I think for things like travel, especially so, because you can sit on your couch with your Nexus 7 and flick through all of these hotels. It can be a nice experience.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing that strikes me immediately when I look at this app is, wow, I think everyone on the design team is probably carrying a phone by a different manufacturer.
Yes, that definitely does seem to be the case. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about the specifics around some of the design issues, but you can straight away see, we've got these kind of weird looking tabs, the two small buttons here. We've got the action bar, which is nice, but then we're not using sort of a standard up affordance to sort of control the navigation, but
which
more
would be
detail
nice.
level. I like that, again, we happen to be in my hometown of Perth, that the number 6 attraction and the best recommendation here is the Swan River. It's a river.
I like rivers.
Rivers are great. And skyscraper, I guess that's number 97, but anyway, I digress. So we've got things to see, places to eat, places to stay, all sort of put there for you to observe, which is nice. It gives you that ability to be able to create your entire trip all in one place.
Cool.
Nice.
All right, so those are the apps that we're looking at today. Let's go in a little deeper,
Absolutely,
open them up,
yeah,
and see what's going on.
Let's really get in there and perform a clinic. So
Right.
we've put together some prescriptions, and I know you've spent a little bit more time on the apps this week than I have, Ian. So why don't you tell folks what does it take to make a great travel booking and planning app?
Well, first, as always, you need to be consistent with the Android Design Guide. Why is that important? Because we want to have a consistent experience so users always know how to do what they want to do. Now, remember last week we talked about camera apps and we said that they should be pretty and consistent. In this case, of course you want to be pretty, but they don't need to be artistic.
Yeah.
More than anything else, they need to be useful and consistent and probably also branded.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure people know what they're using. And I think one thing which is consistent here, we're talking about, particularly when it comes to hotels and tourist attractions, to make good use of photos. That's really what's going to sell people on a destination, is being able to see that. So we want to see nice, big, rich images.
Absolutely. Now, travel apps just need to be location aware.
Yeah.
Most apps do, but
Kinda
certainly,
makes sense.
when you're traveling, obviously you're almost always going to be starting from your current location or somewhere nearby. It should integrate with my digital life. Now, I can't overemphasize this. This is really, really important to me. I want to make sure that the tools that I use to keep track of my life, like calendar, like Google Plus or Facebook or Twitter, are integrated into this tool so that my travel plans and my real life, my regular life, can fit together. Maybe this is just me, but I've honestly sometimes forgotten that I was going to go to China until the last minute.
Wait, is that today?
Right. It's like I would literally make plans like, oh yeah, I can totally go out with you on Tuesday night. Oh yeah, I'm going to be in Shanghai. We want something that plans your entire trip. A trip is not just a flight.
Absolutely.
It's a flight, a hotel. It's transportation to and from the hotel.
There's things to do.
Random touristy crap that my wife likes. And finally, we want something that's going to let me do the entire set of transactions, buy everything related to that trip on the device. I don't want to have to go to a website.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to pop up a browser window if possible.
No, and I don't want to have to save something and then log into my account on a computer to be able to complete things. I just want to be able to do everything right from whatever device I'm using.
So let's keep those in mind and take a look at some of these apps.
Absolutely. And while we do that, I want to remind folks that we have producer Scott Main keeping an eye on our YouTube and Google Plus events. So if you have any questions or comments about the apps that we're looking at, maybe ways in which what are the prescriptions you guys think it takes to make a great app? Do let us know, and we will try and answer those questions as well.
Absolutely. Producer Scott, do we have anything interesting on the comment stream right now?
Not seeing a whole lot of interaction.
Shame on you. Shame on you, viewers. Talk to Producer Scott. He's lonely.
He's very lonely. He's just checking his email. He's got this frown on his face. It's a
Yeah,
sad sight.
I really don't
hard
know
to
what you
be
guys are
Scott.
talking about.
He just moved down here from Seattle, and the sun is killing him.
It's foggy and overcast in Mountain View today, but even still.
Even still, the sun is killing him. And this doesn't look like September. It looks like late July. All right, let's go ahead and
let's
take a
do
look.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, take a little deeper look, starting with WorldScope. Now, this is going to be a quick one because there's not a lot to this app.
Yeah.
But I did have some issues with not just our prescriptions for a travel app, which don't necessarily apply to this particular app,
No.
but with the UI. The first problem that I had is that this area here, this looks like a view pager.
It
Right?
does. Yeah, it looks like you should be able to fling that around.
No.
Uh,
However, this is.
oh, okay. So
So
the
you've got
tabs,
the tabs.
are swipeable.
Right. Now, I think that they may have done that because when you get to the map, which is zoomed way out, it's a little bit difficult to operate this as a view page, and that's understandable, but I don't feel like that's necessarily an excuse for making it completely broken everywhere else.
Yeah. I mean, there are ways that you can sort of do an edge swipe as well, so you can still have a view pager type functionality while you've still got a full screen multi-pan. You know.
It also bothered me that the search tab doesn't actually search, it's just the map view.
Oh, so it's more browse via. Well, it's just
Right,
map, isn't
and then
it?
I have to do.
hit search.
I have to actually hit. Now they are doing the regular search bar and the action bar, so that's very, very
Yeah, they've
nice.
done that the right way, which is nice to see. And you've got your appropriate upper affordance there to escape out of it, which is nice to see. You can see here, one thing that I noticed was that we're actually cutting off the name of the app while we're in portrait mode. So it seems like this might be an opportunity to drop the name completely and just stick with the logo rather than having an abbreviated name, which just kind of makes it look squished.
You also might give some serious thought to completely getting rid of these tabs and making those a navigation drop down. So obviously you've decided that you don't want view pager activities, and if you don't want a view pager, then being able to just tap on the app icon and have a drop down navigation is going to be just as fast, pretty much just as discoverable, and you get this screen real estate back.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that if you actually use the standard action bar tabs, it will switch between having a drop-down navigation in portrait mode, and if you've got space, so landscape mode or on tablets, it'll actually switch to a tab layout instead.
Very nice.
Get it for
And that
free.
would be very cool. And I mentioned before too that once you're on this map, zooming in is not particularly efficient. And if you already know where you want to go, being able to zoom in on the specific location that you wanted is nigh impossible.
Right.
The best way I've found to do that is to actually tap this key, the little places key, and that'll show you things that you can zoom in on.
Gotcha. And then you can just keep hitting that target
Right,
until you're
and
zoomed in.
readjusting and just feeling frustrated the whole time.
Right.
This is something where, honestly, it might be better to just integrate with a nice Maps API, or at least give some thought to how you would zoom in directly. I actually thought this button might do it, but
it
it
zooms
actually
out.
does exactly the opposite of what I wanted.
That's interesting. As well, I look at that icon and the first thing I think is full screen. Like I expect it to just go
Right.
full screen, and it doesn't, so that's a little bit confusing.
So how can I zoom? Well, I have to actually select it off a
zoom
menu,
straight.
which, wow, yeah.
Okay.
1995 called, they want your model of user interaction back.
Yeah, that's definitely something you want to have front and center, that ability to really zoom in. But it's an interesting app, and I think they've done something kind of cool there.
Yeah. So the scores here aren't fair at all. We scored based on travel and booking as opposed to this sort of niche app. But let's take a look at what we've got here.
I rather suspect that the scores are going to come
the
at the
scores
end.
are at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see where we were going now. In future,
Yeah.
the scores will go after we've discussed the app. But
All
for
right.
now, we're going to bounce through each of the apps first and then go back and have a look at how each of them scored on our
Perfect.
prescriptions.
All right.
So the next app, let's bring up Kayak and dig a little deeper there as well.
Right. Did we want to bring up Kayak or did we want to bring up Hipmunk?
Hipmunk.
Ha-ha!
I'm looking at next slide instead of current slide.
I am absolutely not the only one making mistakes today.
No.
Okay. Hipmunk, okay, first thing, they really did make some efforts to be more Android-y. Unfortunately, some of those efforts felt a little misguided.
Yeah.
For instance, it was actually in the news. They said, "Oh yeah, we tried to make it more Android-y by squaring off the corners so they're not rounded."
Sure, that's Android. I can see that.
Yeah. You know what? We don't have an entire hour to discuss that, so let's just point out that these buttons down here in the corner should almost certainly be on an action bar.
Absolutely. I mean, they are actions, right?
They are. Now, the icons here look like more or less standard Android icons, but they don't do the same thing.
Okay.
This looks like settings right down here in the corner.
It looks like settings.
No, it is filter.
Oh.
There is a filter
There's
icon.
a filter icon, yeah. It's a little
Settings should actually take you to settings.
I should point out as well, we don't want settings to be an action. It should probably live in the overflow menu. If there was an overflow menu.
Unless settings is absolutely crucial for your application.
This is nice.
Yeah.
This heat map is kind of awesome.
Very cool, yeah. Now, this is the list icon. It's a little confusing, but it'll allow you to view the hotels by list.
Okay.
Here's the problem. It'll
Search
pop up
first,
a toast.
Then tap to view this list of hotels.
Please do not press this button again. So this is a scolding toast.
Yeah, it
You're
is.
scolding
You've done
your
the
user.
wrong
Yeah,
thing.
oops.
You're holding it wrong.
Instead, I mean, you're popping up the toast to tell them what to do. Why don't you just do it?
Yeah.
You know, you're never not looking at a map in this.
This is true. I noticed
So-
that when I was sort of playing around with the app earlier, trying to find, is there a sort of a step back from that? And it's not. It's all map-based, which is kind of a nice idea. You have this sort of rich interface. You can see exactly where you're looking, where you're going to stay.
Yep.
I
Now,
really want you to go to
right.
Florida.
Yeah. See, if I type in Venice, Italy,
So this
it
is something.
still wants me to go to Florida. Now, if I dismiss this, dismiss the keyboard, and say search, then it works.
Interesting.
Okay, now while it's working, we can complain a little bit about the progress bar.
Yeah.
So the progress bar is completely wrong. It doesn't look like any progress bar that exists in Android at all. And it's not clear exactly what I'm going to do with it. I guess the X is for cancel. I mean, that makes sense.
Usually the case.
And, that's nice, but it's down at the very bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
Would
Small
be
touch
very,
target.
very small touch target. Would be very easy to accidentally hit the home key. I'm not loving it.
Yeah. And it just kind of looks tacked on. I'd really much prefer to see something like a refreshing image in the action bar, something to show that progress is happening, much like you would see if you hit refresh on Gmail or something like that.
Now, once I'm there, it's very cool. I can toggle heat maps. I can see what kind of vice is in the area. Oh, that's wrong. Venice is full of vice everywhere. I wonder what they count as vice.
That's a very good question. Is it location specific, or does it figure out where you are now and then?
That's a good question. I think they're selling unrolled something I can't talk about on TV. Okay. So, really nice features, but the UI could use some work. Now, once I actually get in here, we've got the nice stuff. It's like, we've got...
Well, they've even got TripAdvisor reviews, in fact.
Yeah. So I like that. That's nice. Would maybe like a few more pictures. You can see they've done some weird things. It's like they've got their own...
Oh, that's not
you
quite...
see how that bounces around?
Not quite right, yeah.
So it's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody obviously spent some time with that. They certainly didn't make it worse. My only concern is that when you write your own, unless it's doing something that is incredibly important to your app, you're sort of opening yourself up for some real problems later on. Sure, we love the bouncy feel now, but later on, if the Android platform goes in a different direction, everyone else is going to pick up that updated feel, and you're going to be stuck with this thing that is going to end up feeling outdated.
So there's no problem in taking some of the built-in framework components and modifying them, adding a little bit of your own spice to it, but it is something you want to do carefully, knowing that at any time you could run the risk of starting to look aged and old.
It's also very difficult to get back to where you were.
Yeah, I noticed that the navigation isn't quite right.
It's really easy to back out of something. In fact, they have multiple ways to back out of a screen, including the up affordance and an action button and the back button. But then to get back into that hotel search, you got to research,
Do the whole
which
thing.
it's a pain.
It's one of the things which I noticed about this app, and it's something I've seen quite a lot of, is sort of you navigate into something which has a view pager, and then that view pager has entirely different contexts. So it's like, this is about the hotel, this is reviews, and as you're swiping through, it makes sense, but you kind of feel like you're navigating through the app because it's a sort of a totally different UI. And then I often find myself then hitting back to then go back to say the previous view pager, which isn't the behavior that should happen. But then I find myself back here at the search screen, and then I have to do the whole thing again. I have to wait for it to complete, and so you kind of want a way to prevent that accidental back behavior from really ruining your day.
And what's even worse is that here, I'm going through exactly the same dance that I had to go through last time, which is extremely disturbing, considering that if I go all the way back here and try a flight search, it has a recent searches option.
Yeah.
So why doesn't it have a recent searches option for hotels? I'm actually more likely to need that since it's not all composed, because I haven't necessarily decided where I'm going to stay or which particular suburb I'm going to be in. I mean, I do a lot of different hotel searches, and I want to go back to them.
Yeah, typically you're going to do several different hotel searches in different areas. You want to be able to compare them easily, and I think that's really something you want to be able to do really quickly, is have this list of hotels that you're considering and just be able to click through them and review them really.
Now notice it is location aware, so it found out where we're at, and
Perth.
I think we're going to Honolulu. Sure, no, I think we're going to Venice. Now again,
so interesting. So
this is
now
the
it's a
most
little bit
interesting match that I've seen, actually. Okay, you know what? Screw Venice. We're going to go to Athens.
Nice.
That's right. Now this is a part I do
place.
really like. This is a good UI. I can, I'm going to go over Thanksgiving.
Nice.
No better time to go to Athens.
Now, the interesting thing here, so I looked at this app a little while ago, and you've correctly done your from and to dates. I made the mistake the first time, and I'm not sure if it'll work, of just pressing the date I was going to leave and then hitting done.
And that'll give you a one-way flight.
And that gives me a one-way flight, and then I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to turn a one-way flight into a return flight until someone had the good sense to just, click a second date.
Exactly. So it's a really easy to use interface. It's wonderful, but it's not discoverable.
Exactly. So that's something you want to consider is, chances are, in most cases, people are looking for a return flight. And so you want to make it really obvious if they have only selected one date, that this is going to result in a one-way, and that perhaps they should click a return date if they want to have a return.
Now, here's an example of a case where they may not have completely thought through their layout. Because as you can see over here, the calendar is very nicely formatted. Most of the really important data has been put into bold fonts that are a good size, good readability for this screen. But then you've got three areas, the two buttons, and this little area up here that says tap done to continue. It's just sort of taking up space, telling me something that I'm sure I already knew. And those are in a tiny and almost illegible font.
Yeah, right.
And I think a lot of this comes from making some assumptions about the devices that you programmed on, especially when it comes to screen size and density. Remember that some screens are relatively small, but incredibly dense.
Yeah.
And if you're not thinking about that sort of HD density, then you're going to have a bad time.
In fact, while you had that screen back up,
I'm going to do the search because it's going to take a while. Yeah.
So one of the interesting things I noted is when you've got that calendar view up, it comes up as a dialog. Now I know why it comes up as a dialogue. It's because if you're on the web and you need to choose a calendar entry, you want to put it in a dialogue. You want to put a little screen which comes up rather than having the entire display taken up with it. On your phone, that was already covering 90% of the screen. Why not just make it a full screen activity and have it behave in that same way? Have it done affordance up the top so that you can just continue that way rather than having this sort of weird pop-up dialogue, which doesn't really work, I think, in most cases on a mobile device.
That's true. It's harder to write code that way. It's a little harder to manage the activity stack, and it doesn't buy you anything, does it? Because
No,
there's nothing
you don't
can
get anything
switch
extra
to.
for it.
Right. So the and the other thing too is that if you put it in a full screen activity, then all of the navigation has sort of been done for you by the framework.
Yeah.
Good example of this would be the alarm clock app, where you also have to set a date and time, and they just have a full screen and done. At least they do now, I think.
Yeah.
I think they didn't before, actually.
Indeed, I think
yeah.
there used to be more of those pop-ups, but it's a trend that we're seeing more and more of in mobile sort of design, is getting rid of dialogues in all places and having full screen activities whenever you can.
Yep. Now this is great. This is it's showing me where I can go. So if I do Cathay, I'm gonna have a layover in Hong Kong, which is great. Cathay is
Sure, Cathay is
always
nice.
take that.
Emirates
First
is
thing
nice too.
then oh yeah. Well, I've never been able to take Emirates. You know why?
Why is that?
I'm not special.
Oh.
Based in the U.S. You'll get used to it.
This is true.
You don't get any good service from the U.S.
I moved here and suddenly like all of the good airlines, Singapore, Emirates, Cathay,
No, not so much.
Air New Zealand is like the best way to get back home.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that says, but it's nothing good.
Just don't fly Northwest. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so layover in Zurich, and then et cetera, et cetera. So that's some nice stuff, and it's listed by Agony. So I could
this
also
is a
list
really
this
nice
by
display.
price.
I really like what they're showing here. It feels like the actual way that they've implemented the layout here isn't quite as nice as it could be. They've got something which is incredibly useful. I mean, this is, I think, one of the real selling points of the app, is just how useful this screen is. But if you look at things like the prices along the left here, it all feels a little bit cramped in. There's not enough spacing around the elements. Each of the line items seems just a little bit too little. Like the rows need to just be a little bit higher, I think. Sort of 48 pixel rhythm. Follow the sort of design guideline ideas that we have there, and that'll just make it feel a little bit more natural. Here, even though it's not, it feels cramped. Some of the fonts are a bit too small. Some of the touch targets are a bit too small. It just feels
to be
like
fair, they are trying to present a lot of information.
Absolutely.
And in their
That's a
defense, they do have some really good zooming.
Yes.
You can see that as they zoom, it actually feels very intuitive. Things are getting bigger, but they're getting bigger in ways that are useful to me that aren't exactly what I would get if it was just a naive zoom. You can see these things resizing in more of a smart way.
Yeah.
So overall, I like it. The one thing I would like is a few more options here to filter by things like frequent flyer miles. Because if you're going, even if you only take one trip a year, if it's this long, you want to figure out some frequent flyer things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so nice app, few issues. Let's go ahead and take a look at Kayak, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right, so Kayak, I thought, was not really a great design from the UI standpoint. It certainly doesn't feel at all like an Android app when you get into it for the first time. There's no action bar. There's this notifications button down here that's way, way too small, and it's down at the bottom where I'm going to probably miss it. And then it's not even a button, it's kind of a drawer.
Yeah, the reverse drawer. That's an interesting pattern that was popular for a little while until people realized it's kind of counterintuitive. The drawer comes down from the top. Doesn't really slide up from the bottom.
And I'm not even going to complain too much except that it's tiny. And it should at least have some indication that it's a drawer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all it's got is a little gradient on it, which we hate anyway. And also it's got the anti-Roman Nurek pattern of right chevrons.
Absolutely, and we've got the gradient-filled header with the title in the center, which again is a Roman Nurek anti-pattern.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I don't get an iOS vibe off of this as much as I get just Kayak branding vibes.
Sure.
So I'm good with that. But it's a little unnecessary. Now, when I actually search, it gives me a progress bar that apparently they ported over from Gingerbread. One thing that I loved about it was earlier when I was inside the Faraday cage and had no connectivity whatsoever, I actually tried this, and it turns out that progress bar goes at a constant speed, hits 99%, and then just stops.
Progress bars are hard.
Yes. Probably a bar was not the greatest idea. I think a progress circle spinner.
Yeah, if you don't know how long it's going to take, and this is a genuine problem. Often you just don't know.
No,
you don't want to have that kind of the old Microsoft joke where it's like 5 minutes, 2 days, 3 hours.
Right.
That's not good. If you don't know, that's fine. Just have a spinner, have something which basically implies, look, work is being done. Rest assured, but we don't know how long it's going to take.
Exactly. If you don't know how long, unless you are actually trying to teach Zeno's paradox.
Sure.
That would work.
Yeah, that could be
All right,
useful.
so we get into this. Once again, we get some branding here, which is, I think, attractive.
Yeah.
Feels a little odd to me given that we have very little space on this device. So all of the rounding and drop shadows and craziness is going on there. Feels a little bit like wasted space to me. But I think that's a matter of opinion.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern looking at this is more just the plethora of gradients, and gradients with reverse gradients to imply selection. That bar up the top here just looks kind of weird.
That's true. It's actually really difficult to see what your selection is.
Yeah.
And then of course we've got from gradient land down to ugly system dialog land.
Yeah.
Why?
Plus, this idea that you'll lose unsaved progress. Don't tell me that I'm going to lose progress. Just make it so that I don't lose progress.
Right? Exactly.
You're holding it wrong. That's not the way this app works. Don't do it this way. If you have enough users who are using the app wrong that you feel the need to tell them that they're using the app wrong,
maybe they're not the ones that are wrong.
I'm just saying.
Right. So anyway, let's so it's got a lot of the features that you'd expect, and I think they're all done relatively well. I don't know who this map provider is buying, but they seem to be all right, up and coming, whatever.
It's doing all right.
This plus and minus zoom buttons, I think, were maybe stolen from somewhere.
Yeah, that looks like. Well, no, in fairness, I think that's the default control that you can apply to any map, or indeed anything. So that's, it just looks kind of old school, but I think that's
all right.
It's the Android ones.
Really? With the gradient?
Well, I think it was for back in Gingerbread Land.
Ah, okay.
But I could be wrong.
All right. Well,
it looks familiar to me.
I apologize. So, again, here, you've got the rounded corners. I don't know. I don't want to hate on that. I think it looks good. The main question I had when I saw those is it going to perform well? And the truth is, yes, it performs really, really well. It's just very, very fast on this Jelly Bean phone. So can't really complain about it. It does have the right chevrons, which bother us just because we feel like in Android, it should be apparent to everyone that items in a list can be clicked on to get more stuff. And if you have a chevron, it sort of implies that there's something special about that chevron as opposed to the rest of the list item. And that's very rarely the case.
Yeah.
And if it is the case, then you should actually separate it out and maybe consider using something more descriptive than a chevron for it. The main problem, though, that I have with Kayak is at some point it removes its Android mask and reveals itself for what it really is, which is just a front end to a bunch of lousy websites. Well, they're not lousy, but they're certainly not optimized for mobile.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'm back in a web browser thinking, well, wow, why did I download this app? It's just a bunch of bookmarks.
Yeah,
why would you download an app that's just a bookmark? All right, but again, we do have a lot of nice features.
Yeah, you've got the flight tracker here. We've got currency conversion. So a lot of the stuff that you want to have and use while you're on the go. I mean, one thing which I would point out here, so in this implementation, they don't have a real action bar, or at least they don't always use it. And so you've got this list view, which is kind of a dashboard pattern, but as a list, so it kind of skirts the the guidelines there.
Well, yeah, and I have to ask myself, how does this all fit together? I mean, it seems like what we've done is put a grab bag of really interesting functionality. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your foot there.
It's all right.
That's all right. Yeah, this whole standing up thing is going to take some
kinda
getting
wacky,
used to.
yeah.
Yeah. So the problem is you've got a grab bag of functionality, all of which seems useful, but none of which really does a task for me. It's not a task-oriented interface. What I really need is something that's going to take me through the entire process. You know, where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? What do you want to do when you're there?
Yeah.
Here's where the holes are. You know, you forgot to get transportation from this flight to this hotel. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. And even here, like you're looking at these tasks, and there's just an overwhelming number of things that you can do. Whereas I think everything, once you get past, almost price alerts, really, airline directory, airline fees, airport information, preferences, my location, watching tweets from Kayak, feedback about all of that seems like it isn't really the purpose of the app. And it just becomes a distraction. You're just flicking through here going, oh wow, there's a lot of stuff that this can do. I'm really only going to look at the first 3 because everything beyond that is just too much.
Right, you've got this whole list of extra features. It's like, oh, thank God they're in this app because it's not like I have a smartphone or anything.
Exactly.
Right? So here's my advice. First, make the booking part of this app more task-oriented, more oriented around planning an entire trip as opposed to interacting with different modes of travel. Second, why not figure out what the user needs at the particular time? If I'm sitting at home, I probably want to do some booking. If I'm out on the road already, especially if I'm inside of a trip, during a trip that you know about because I booked it through your app, why not give me all of the features that are down here at the bottom?
Yeah.
Then.
Exactly. Yeah, try and basically you've got all of this information. You are running on this person's smartphone. You know a lot about them just from the information which you have got from their bookings, if nothing else. So you really want to try and contextualize your app based on what it is that people are likely to be using, what they're likely to be trying to do.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple more. Now, you had a look at fast booking.
Yeah.
And I think we already looked at several of the features of this app, but how do you feel about the UI?
So again, this UI looks really kind of, it's kind of interesting because it is flat, which is nice. We kind of like this the flat idea in Android, but again, it feels like it's a little bit too cramped. All of the details that we've got underneath these almost tabs at the top are tiny, tiny little fonts to the degree where you probably can't even see it online. And I'd like to make that information bigger. This is kind of key data. It's your check-in dates, how many nights you're staying, how many people.
Right.
It's all of the filters that you want to apply.
Well, this is something that always kind of kills me. Because if you go back to the main screen, look at all this area down here, right?
You got a huge amount of
all
blank
we've got
space.
is an area that says, I don't have any results to show you. Well, you know what? Awesome. Look at all that space that you can use to make your interface less cramped. And what a great opportunity to get your user started on a task. Instead, I start the app by feeling inadequate already because there's all this space that I haven't filled, and then I need to figure out these little tiny buttons up at the top. To be fair, they're not completely tiny, but they're still pretty small.
They are. Let's see.
Ooh,
There we go.
nice. Where's that
We're
duct
very
tape?
lucky it's going to come back. Sweet.
Awesome.
And so again, you've got this weird combination between having tiny, tiny little fonts and then large amounts of white space. Like if you're looking over in this section here, again, white space. And we've got these pictures, which is nice, but the pictures are tiny. So you almost want to do something, maybe even a full bleed effect. So it's just basically pictures with text over it. I don't know how well that would work, but I think it's a way to try and get rid of some of the white space and replace it with useful information.
Yeah, I think really to boil down what Reito's saying is that if you look at modern apps right now that are visually oriented, you will see that the trend is to make the pictures much bigger and much more a part of the UI. And people like that.
And they've done
it
a great job. Once you sort of navigate in, you can see here we've got this scrolling gallery of pictures.
Absolutely.
Which is wonderful. And you've got these resources, and this is something that I think this app does better than most of the ones we looked at, is really showing off the pictures and having a big gallery of things for each of the places.
You're right, but I'll tell you, if this had been created by, for instance, some of the photo people that we talked to last week, you know what I think you'd be seeing on that thing that you just switched away from? I think that this entire area here, the area with the caption
Yep.
would be semi-transparent over the top of the picture.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Yeah.
I think they would use that opportunity to just make the picture a lot bigger.
Exactly. I mean, the picture here is what's selling it, right? I mean, we've got this big block of text, which you will read, but if you're sort of flicking through a bunch of different hotel options, it's the pictures which is gonna make you stop and actually find out if the room offers features that you want, as well as looking great. Again, we've kind of got these non-standard tabs along the top. It feels like you could do better just using a sort of something like a view page, or at least sort of more standard tabs. Gallery has sort of, again, unnecessary white space. Great opportunity to have something really rich and engaging here.
The white
using
space
the
there
right
is
stuff to
a
share.
shame. It really is.
So this is interesting. So we've got the star affordance, which is the right way to indicate that you want to save something or like something inside of Android. But again, we're using toasts along the bottom to notify folks of what you've done. Again, you shouldn't really need to tell people.
Well, yeah, that feels like a debug toast.
Exactly.
That feels like the programmer wanted to make sure that something was actually done. All you need to do is fill in the star, which is what they did.
Exactly.
Filling in the star says, yeah, we've made this a favorite.
It's starred. Likewise, once we navigate through, we can see that the up affordance isn't being used up the top here. So that's given that this is a standard action bar, it would be nice to see that being done. Otherwise, yeah, I mean that's the thing. We've got the chevrons here, which again we would prefer not to see. So I think that's the key thing for this.
Do they do anything different? I mean, if I press the chevron, does it do anything?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same, and you can actually see here that the scroll bar
is over the top of the chevrons.
Overlaying the chevron. So that's
so it's
the
chevron isn't doing anything. It's just confusing the user. There are UI designs that are not Android where the chevron is important, but those systems generally have a very strong rightward flow, right?
Exactly. It's like you click it and everything moves. So it kind of makes sense. Whereas with Android, you don't necessarily know that it's what it's going to do, and it could be different based on platform versions or even carrier implementations. But otherwise, so I think that's the big feedback there. I think it could do, you've got great information, useful functionality. It just needs a little bit of a UI refresh to make it a little bit more richer, a bit more engaging.
Absolutely.
So I think we've got a couple more minutes. We want to get a chance to, do an overview of each of the apps. But the last one we wanted to look at is TripAdvisor, which I really quite like. So again, it's a very similar sort of look to Kayak when we open it up here. You've got hotels, restaurants, flights, forums, Near Me Now, My Saves, and Write a Review. So again, here they've cut it off at it's about a page's worth, which is nice. And there's none of the extra stuff. The extra stuff lives here in the overflow menu. And in fact, some of them are duplicated. So Near Me Now, My Saves are both also in the overflow. So you think, do you need them in both places? Could you save some space by moving these off the main menu? And tools, I think they've got basically links to other apps, which is, I think, going along the model you were suggesting earlier. Do you need to bundle a currency converter, or can you just include a link to an app which does that specifically?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a checkbox for people, but...
Yeah, and so for TripAdvisor, they've got city guides. So this is, that full service model which we were talking about, so that, you're in a place, you want to get the guides, find out what to do, you can download their city guides to get that extra information. So they're using the appropriate search, which is nice. If you navigate through, again, they're not really using the up affordance in the way we would expect. Big branding, big TripAdvisor up along the top in the action bar. I personally kind of prefer to see this changed around so that they're just using the icon and then using the up affordance to help with navigation.
Yeah, the truth is that having TripAdvisor in the title bar probably isn't important at all. You have a very distinctive icon, and just using the icon with some useful text there instead of TripAdvisor, tell me where I am in the app, for instance,
exactly.
or use that space for buttons.
Because that's where I think the app falls down a little bit, is that in terms of navigation, it's very difficult to know where you are, where you've been, and what ways you can back out of things. We're just here, we've gone through 3 levels of depth here, and there's sort of no indication that we're anywhere other than the beginning of the app. Similarly, if you sort of look at this display, you've got kind of a mismatch, or like a mismatch of different UI styles. You've got these buttons with the sort of glassy gradient, which are way too small. The touch targets here are much too small, and the attractions up the top here, just above it, in tiny, tiny font, which is actually really difficult to touch.
Looks like a web toolbar right there.
It does, yeah.
Well, and then let's talk about the tabs above it, which, I wouldn't use this word often, but they look amateur.
They do.
They are not.
They've got kind of the gradient, reverse gradient. Pressing them is really slow. It feels And I rather suspect this might be the case, that this is actually, at least some of this is actually a web view.
Right.
Which is fine, like implementing it as such if you've already got those skills, but you want it to be really responsive and fast. And clicking on each of these takes a fair while before it'll flick over. And we don't get any sort of the view page of functionality. These are scrolled, which again is probably fine. But one thing I did want to highlight here at the bottom is this C20 more. Don't make me press it. Once I get to the bottom, just load it. I'm down the bottom. Presumably I want to see more, so it should sort of be able to keep track of where I am in the list and automatically, dynamically start bringing in that extra content when I get there.
Well, we were over-ambitious today. We chose 5 apps to take a look at, and that's too much.
Yeah.
But, whatever. We had fun, and it's not like anybody else need this room after us, right?
No, in fact...
It's not like we're postponing, the new episode of Grey's Anatomy or something.
Heaven forbid.
Is that still a thing? I don't know.
I think it may be a thing. I think there was a plane crash. I don't know.
All right, well, let's
Something's
take a
going
look at the final scores.
All right, so final scores for the apps today. So let's have a look. These are the prescriptions, just to remind everyone, because it seems like it was a long time ago that we had these last on screen. So this is what we're going to be judging each of the apps on. And I think we're using exciting star ratings today. Is that right?
Absolutely. Well, I got tired of trying to decode the colors, so Worldscape Webcams did not score well in this particular roundup, mostly because it turned out it wasn't actually the type of app we were looking for, and also I think there was a bad call by the refs. Topical! It has a relatively consistent user interface, but it's not very good at following the Android UI guidelines, especially using a view pager that's not really a view pager instead of a navigation drop-down, which is kind of what it actually was. And the rest of it, we're just going to skip because it's not that app.
It's not that app,
Let's
exactly.
go ahead and go on to Hipmunk, on the other hand. Much more consistent with the design guide than a lot of the apps we looked at. We gave it 3 stars just because it didn't have really consistent use of icons. They got some of the text completions horrifically wrong, and they're on record saying that the main thing they did for Android was taking the rounded corners off because Android can't do rounded corners.
So it feels like they could
do more. To be
do
fair,
more.
they came and apologized in person for that, but still. All right, but really, really excellent app. We're looking forward to seeing the update on that.
Oh,
one, 'cause
absolutely.
they've got some very nice functionality. Kayak, of course, is about as consistent as Hipmunk was. I should have knocked off 1 more star here. They should have had an action bar, and I really wish they'd get rid of that lengthy list of all the things that the app could possibly
Absolutely.
do.
I mean, we talk about this a lot, and that's focus. It's a really important thing when you're developing an app for a smartphone, is figure out what it is that your app does, which is the most important thing, and make that front and center, even at the cost of eliminating some of your functionality. People tend to install your app for the main thing it does, not because, I was choosing between Kayak and TripAdvisor, but Kayak had a currency converter, so that's why I kept it around.
Right.
It's probably pretty unlikely.
Exactly. I feel like people are missing a golden opportunity, actually. Why not just install that separately? Say, hey, buy Kayak, you also get this currency converter.
Absolutely.
The other thing that it does is it doesn't complete transactions on your device, it just sends you to the web. I can get on the web from any device. I didn't need this app to send me there. So let's take a look at the last 2 then.
So I like that the stars are moving around as we hit the button. It's kind of
That
cool.
was completely unintentional,
I
but
figured
awesome.
it was. So fast booking, again, we kind of got the same issue with the consistency with the design guide. It feels like they're pretty close. They're using an action bar. They've got a kind of a flat UI. I think they just need to look at their spacing, look to have more images front and center, and I think they can really take this and take it up to the next level.
And possibly rethink the color scheme a little bit, because you've got a very light main color on white and gray, and it's a little bit not contrasty enough.
Yeah, it could be, the whole thing could just have a little more punch.
Right.
And the last app was TripAdvisor, of course, and so they did pretty well. They got a lot of stars going on here. Good focus.
I think that's because it was the end of the night, we were both drunk, and we were just giving out stars like candy.
Stars to anyone. It does pretty well. It does your entire trip. It's very location aware. It does the transactions on the device itself. Again, I think they could do a little bit more with the design guide just to take it that little bit further, make it a little bit more rich and consistent.
Absolutely. Okay.
Whew. All right,
that was fun. Let's not do that again.
Let's not do that again. Interesting. So if we could switch to the full screen view of us as we say goodbye. Nice. So two of these apps are going to be looked at by Roman, Nick, and Adam on Android Design in Action. That's Kayak and WorldScope webcams are both going to be getting the Android Design in Action makeover next Tuesday morning. So do tune in for that.
And stay tuned because I know that at least some of these apps, Hipmunk and a couple of, I believe a couple others are updating soon. And so we'll be able to see what they do in response to some of the design guidelines that we've shared with them already.
Absolutely, and we'll be inviting all of the developers from the apps that we looked at today to join us next week for the Developer Strike Back next Thursday at 11:30. So if you help build one of these apps and you would like to tell us exactly what you think about our feedback, let us know and we'll make sure to get you on the show next week.
It starts with the App Clinic, then Roman and his design guidelines, then Developer Strike Back. It is the circle of app life.
Absolutely. We've also got, so for next week at the App Clinic, we're going to do video players, I think is the plan, yeah?
Exactly, and we are actually going to settle on those right after this show. We're going to give ourselves a week this time.
I think that's possibly a little ambitious because I don't think the moderator page exists yet. So it may be difficult for people to have nominated their apps. But we'll see. If it does exist and people have nominated them, we will certainly be choosing them. If not, then do get on quickly because as soon as we have 3 to 4 likely candidates, we will be choosing those to give us enough time to really get into these apps and try and dig a little bit deeper.
That's right. So get out there. Get on that moderator page. Hit refresh a lot. Hit refresh like you're going for Google I/O tickets.
That's a lot of refreshing. We're going to take off. We've kept you guys for long enough. I think we have the Friday Games Review coming up later today.
Absolutely. The Games Review is going to be at, I believe, 2 p.m. Yeah. They're playing with times. They're playing with hosts. They're playing with a lot of
Who knows
things.
what's going to happen?
It's going to be crazy.
In any case, yeah, tune in for that. We'll be back for a bunch of shows, but we'll certainly be back. Hopefully see you guys next week for the App Clinic. I'm Rodo Meyer.
I'm Ian Nee Lewis.
We'll see you later.